The void of space stretched endless and cold around the Thyrany survey vessel, known as the Quiet Observation. And Commander Varela stood at the center of his bridge, watching the stars drift past like scattered diamonds on black velvet. His crew moved with quiet efficiency around him, their luminescent skin glowing soft blue in the dim light of the command deck. And the gentle hum of the ship's engines provided a constant reminder that they were alone out here at the very edge of what the Ascendancy called contested space. For 11,000 cycles, the Thyrany had ruled this part of the galaxy through knowledge and careful study. And they had built their empire not through war, but through understanding every species and every technology they encountered. Varese had served the Ascendancy for 200 cycles. And in all that time, he had never found anything that truly surprised him, that was about to change forever. "Commander," called out Senior Scanner Threlix from his station near the front of the bridge. "I am detecting an unknown object at bearing 77 Mark III. Varelis turned his attention to the main viewing screen as his crew adjusted the sensors. And slowly an image began to form in the darkness ahead of them. It was a ship. Though unlike any vessel in the Ascendancy's extensive database, the craft was small by galactic standards, barely 200 meters from front to back. And it tumbled slowly through the void with no apparent control or direction. Its hull was a dull gray color marked with strange symbols that the computer could not translate. And there were no lights visible anywhere on its surface. "What are we looking at here?" Varelis asked as he stepped closer to the screen. Threlix's skin flickered with patterns of confusion as he studied his readings. And when he spoke, his voice carried a note of uncertainty that Varelis had rarely heard from the experienced officer. "I cannot say with certainty, Commander, but initial scans suggest this vessel has been drifting for some time. Perhaps several of their local planetary rotations based on its trajectory." "Their local planetary rotations," Varelis repeated with interest. "So you have identified the point of origin?" "Only partially, Commander. The vessel's construction materials and design patterns suggest it originated from a system we have cataloged but never explored. A region marked in our old records as a restricted zone." This caught the attention of Science Officer Melisandrix, who looked up from her own station with her large dark eyes widening slightly. "A restricted zone?" she asked. "There are very few of those remaining in Ascendancy space. What designation does this system carry?" Threlix consulted his data screens before answering, and when he did, his luminescent skin had grown noticeably dimmer. "System designation 5973 local. Commander, the third planet in that system was classified long ago as a Category 12 death world." A murmur of unease rippled through the bridge crew at these words. Category 12 was the highest danger classification in the Ascendancy's planetary rating system, reserved for worlds so hostile and violent that intelligent life could not possibly survive there, let alone develop technology capable of reaching the stars. Most officers considered Category 12 to be entirely theoretical, a mathematical extreme that existed only in models and simulations. Yet here before them floated a vessel that had apparently come from exactly such a world. "That cannot be correct," Melisandrix said firmly. "Check your calculations again, Threlix. No species could evolve on a Category 12 world and then build starships." "I have checked 3 times already," Threlix replied with a hint of defensiveness in his voice. "The materials in that hull, the radiation signatures, the trace elements on its outer surface, they all point to the same origin. This ship came from the Death World." Commander Varelis felt a strange sensation creeping through his 4 hearts. Something he had not experienced in a very long time. It was fear. But he was a commander of the Ascendancy, and he would not let fear guide his decisions. "Begin a full-spectrum deep scan of the vessel," he ordered with as much calm as he could manage. "I want to know everything about this ship and whatever might be inside it. At once, Commander, Trollocs acknowledged, and his long fingers began dancing across his control panel. The quiet observation's powerful sensors reached out across the void, bathing the tumbling alien craft in invisible waves of energy that would reveal every secret it held. The scan would take several minutes to complete, and during that time Varellus found himself unable to look away from the strange vessel on his screen. There was something about it that troubled him deeply, something beyond the mystery of its impossible origin. The ship looked damaged, he realized, with scorch marks along one side of its hull and a large section near the rear that appeared to have been torn open by some catastrophic force. Whatever had happened to this vessel, it had clearly been violent. Commander, Melisandrex called out suddenly, her voice sharp with alarm. The scan is returning data, and I think you need to see this immediately. Varellus moved to her station and looked down at the readings scrolling across her screen. First, he could not make sense of what he was seeing, because the numbers and patterns did not match anything in his considerable experience. What am I looking at? He asked quietly. Mesendrix's skin had gone almost completely dark, drained of its natural glow by what could only be described as terror. Life signs, Commander, she whispered. There are living beings inside that ship. That is impossible, Varellus said automatically. The vessel shows no power, no life support, no heat signatures of any kind. Nothing could survive in there. And yet something has, Melisandrex replied, her voice trembling slightly. The scan shows organic life forms in some kind of suspended state. Their vital signs are minimal but present, and Commander, there is something else. She looked up at him with eyes full of a fear that Varellus had never seen in her before. The ship is not dead, she continued. It is sleeping, and according to these readings, something inside it is starting to wake up, as if in response to her words. A single light flickered on in the darkness of the alien vessel. Then another and another. Commander Varellus watched in silence as the ship that should have been a tomb slowly began to return to life. And for the first time in 200 cycles of service, he genuinely did not know what to do next. The bridge crew stood frozen at their stations, their collective glow dimming to almost nothing as they witnessed the impossible happening right before their eyes. Something was waking up inside that vessel from the death world, and soon, very soon, they would all discover exactly what that something was. The data from the deep scan continued to pour into the quiet observations computers, and with each new piece of information, the bridge crew grew more and more disturbed by what they were learning about the beings inside the alien vessel. Commander, Varellus stood behind Science Officer Melisandrex as she translated the raw sensor data into something they could understand. And what she found made even the experienced commander feel sick with unease. Begin with the basics, Varellus ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. What kind of creatures are we dealing with here? Melisandrex took a deep breath before speaking, her luminescent skin flickering with patterns of distress that she could not hide. They are carbon-based life forms, Commander, bipedal in structure with bilateral symmetry. 2 upper limbs and 2 lower limbs attached to a central body mass. That sounds fairly standard, Varellus said with a hint of relief. Many species in the galaxy share similar body plans. Yes, Commander. But the similarities end there, Melisandrex replied grimly. These beings are endothermic, meaning they generate their own internal heat, and they maintain a constant body temperature of approximately 37 degrees on the universal scale. Several crew members let out sounds of shock at this information. 37 degrees was hot enough to cause serious injury to most irony, and the idea that a living creature could maintain such temperatures internally seemed almost like a cruel joke. How is that possible? Asked Navigation Officer Calix from across the bridge. Would they not cook themselves from the inside? Their biology has adapted to handle the heat, Melisandrex explained. They have a liquid cooling system that circulates throughout their bodies, pumped by a single powerful muscle that beats constantly without rest for their entire lives. A single heart, Varela said quietly, touching his own chest where his 4 hearts worked in careful sequence. What happens if it fails? They die, Melisandrex answered simply. They have no backup, no redundancy. Just one heart that must never stop beating. The commander shook his head in disbelief at this seemingly terrible design flaw. But Melisandrex was not finished with her report. Their circulatory system operates under pressure that would rupture the blood vessels of any Thyrany, she continued. And their respiratory system processes an atmosphere that contains a highly reactive gas called oxygen, the same substance we use to fuel our most powerful cutting torches. They breathe torch fuel. Threlix asked in horror. Essentially, yes, Melisandrex confirmed. Their entire metabolism is based on controlled combustion happening constantly inside their bodies. It is how they maintain such extreme internal temperatures. Commander Varelis tried to process this information, but each new detail seemed more impossible than the last. What about their physical structure? He asked. You mentioned they come from a Category 12 world. How have they adapted to survive such conditions? Melisandrex pulled up a new set of data on her screen, showing a detailed scan of one of the sleeping beings inside the alien ship. Their skeletal structure is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of their biology, she said. Their bones are made from calcium phosphate, the same mineral compound we use in industrial armor plating. And these bones are arranged in an internal framework that provides both protection and leverage. She highlighted different sections of the scan as she spoke. They have approximately 206 individual bones, each one connected to the others by flexible joints and tough connective tissue. And their muscular system is anchored directly to the skeleton in a way that maximizes their physical strength. How strong are they? Varelis asked. Based on these readings, an average adult specimen could lift and carry approximately half of its own body weight over extended distances without rest, and in short bursts of effort. They can generate forces many times greater than that. The bridge fell silent as everyone tried to imagine facing such a creature in close combat. Melisandrex continued her terrible report. Their immune systems are perhaps the most frightening aspect of their biology, Commander. Inside their bodies there exist billions of specialized cells whose only purpose is to identify and destroy foreign organisms. All species have some form of immune response, Varelis pointed out. Not like this, Melisandrex said with a shake of her head. These immune cells operate like an autonomous military force. They patrol constantly. They communicate with each other. They adapt to new threats. And they remember every enemy they have ever encountered, so they can destroy it faster if it ever returns. She looked up at the commander with fear plain in her large, dark eyes. If one of these beings was infected by a disease that had never existed before, their body would analyze the threat, develop a counterweapon, manufacture that weapon in massive quantities, deploy it throughout their entire system, and then store the blueprint for future use. All without conscious thought or effort on the part of the host organism. How long would that process take? Varelis asked. A few days at most, Melisandrex replied. For serious infections, perhaps a week or two. And they can further enhance this ability through artificial means, introducing weakened versions of diseases to their bodies, so their immune systems can prepare defenses in advance. Commander Varelis stepped back from the science station, his mind reeling from everything he had learned. These beings from the death world were not simply survivors. They were living weapons, biological machines designed by their harsh environment to endure and overcome anything that threatened them. There's one more thing you should know, Commander, Melisandrex said quietly, perhaps the most disturbing detail of all. What is it? Varelis asked. Not sure he wanted to hear the answer, These beings heal, Melisandre said. When their bodies are damaged, when their flesh is torn or their bones are broken, their systems immediately begin the process of repair. Given enough time, they can recover from wounds that would kill any other known species. How much damage can they survive? The commander asked. Based on these scans, they can lose up to 40% of their total blood volume and still remain alive. They can function with only one of many paired organs. They can survive the loss of entire limbs. And given proper medical care, they can recover from injuries that seem absolutely fatal. Melisandre turned back to her screens, where the life signs of the 47 beings were growing stronger by the minute. Commander, these creatures should not exist. Nothing about their biology makes sense by the standards of any other species in our database. They are too hot, too strong, too resilient, too aggressive in their basic biological functions. She paused, struggling to find the right words. They are not predators in the way we understand predators, and they are not prey in any sense of that word. They are something else entirely, something that evolution on their death world has shaped into a form of life that seems specifically designed to survive absolutely anything the universe can throw at them. Commander Varellis looked at the alien vessel on the main screen, where more lights were now flickering on as the ship's systems came back to life. What are they? He asked softly. Speaking more to himself than to his crew, the answer came from the computer, which had finally completed its analysis of the strange symbols on the alien vessel's hull. Species identified, the computer announced in its calm, mechanical voice. Database match found in restricted archives, species designation human. Homeworld Earth, current status unknown. Archive notes attached. Varellis felt all four of his hearts skip a beat. Display the archive notes, he commanded. What appeared on the screen would change everything he thought he knew about the galaxy and his place in it. The archive notes that appeared on Commander Varellis' screen were old. Older than anything he had ever accessed in his 200 cycles of service to the Ascendancy. The data stamp showed that this information had been recorded during the earliest days of Tharani expansion into the galaxy, back when his ancestors had first developed faster than light travel and begun exploring the stars around their home system in those ancient times. A scout vessel, much like the Quiet Observation, had discovered a small blue world orbiting a yellow star, and the crew of that vessel had spent several rotations observing the primitive beings who lived on its surface. The notes were fragmentary and incomplete, but what remained painted a picture that made Varellis' blood run cold. Subject species demonstrates unusual behavioral patterns. The first entry read: primary food acquisition strategy involves sustained pursuit of prey animals over extended distances. Subjects do not rely on speed or stealth, but rather on endurance, following their targets until the prey collapses from exhaustion. Remarkable heat regulation observed. Another entry continued: subjects can maintain physical activity in temperature ranges that would incapacitate any known species. They appear to sweat a liquid from their skin that cools them through evaporation, allowing them to remain active when all other creatures must rest. Varellis scrolled through more entries, each one adding new details to the horrifying portrait of these humans. Subjects demonstrate pack behavior, but with unusual flexibility. They can cooperate in groups of any size from 2 to several thousand, and they appear capable of coordinating complex activities through a sophisticated system of verbal and visual communication. Tool use is extensive and creative. Read another note. Subjects routinely manufacture and modify implements for specific tasks, and they show no hesitation in using objects from their environment as improvised weapons. The final entry in the observation log was marked with the highest priority flags available in the ancient system. Recommendation to Central Command. It read: this species must be classified as maximum threat. and placed under permanent quarantine. They are not yet capable of space travel, but projections suggest they will develop this ability within a few thousand cycles. All ascendancy vessels must avoid this system and make no contact of any kind. These beings are not predators in the traditional sense. They are something far more dangerous. They are persistence hunters, the entry concluded. They do not stop, they do not give up, they do not accept defeat. If they decide to pursue something, they will follow it to the ends of the universe, and eventually they will catch it. Commander Varelis closed the archive file and looked up at the human vessel on his screen. The ship was fully lit now. Power flowing through its systems as whatever emergency protocols it possessed brought it back from the edge of death. Commander, Threlix called out from his station. I am detecting movement inside the alien vessel. The life forms are awakening from their suspended state. How many? Varelis asked. All of them. Commander, all 47 are showing increased vital signs. Their heart rates are rising. Their brain activity is spiking. They are waking up. Melisandrix added her own observations to the report. The ship's internal temperature is climbing rapidly. Their life support systems are raising the atmosphere to match their preferred environmental conditions. She paused, checking her readings twice before continuing. Commander, the interior of that vessel is now hot enough to cause second-degree burns to any Therani who entered without protection. And the air inside contains enough oxygen to fuel a significant explosion. They live in a bomb, Navigation Officer Calyx said in disbelief. Their entire ship is essentially a bomb waiting to go off before anyone could respond to this observation. The communications array crackled with an incoming signal. Everyone on the bridge froze as a voice emerged from the speakers. Speaking in a language none of them had ever heard before, the words were harsh and guttural, full of hard consonants and strange rhythms. But the universal translator quickly began its work of decoding the meaning, unknown vessel. The voice said once the translation was complete. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earth naval vessel Defiant Hope. We have experienced critical systems failure and require assistance. Please respond. Commander Viralis stared at the communications panel as if it might bite him. The voice was calm, steady, almost casual in its tone, despite the obvious crisis that had left a human ship drifting powerless through space. Commander, Melisandrix whispered. According to our scans, their primary reactor suffered a catastrophic failure. The damage to their ship suggests they experienced an uncontained fusion reaction in their engine compartment. That would have killed everyone aboard, Varelis said. Yes, it would have, Melisandrix agreed. Except somehow it did not. They survived what should have been instant death. And now they are asking for help as if nothing particularly unusual has happened. The human captain's voice came through the speakers again. I repeat. This is Captain Vasquez of the Defiant Hope. We are reading your vessel on our sensors and would appreciate any assistance you can provide. We have 47 crew members aboard, and our situation, while stable, is not ideal. Commander Varelis noticed something strange about the captains. Wordshe had described a reactor failure that should have destroyed her ship and killed everyone aboard as a situation. That was not ideal. Not catastrophic. Not desperate, not hopeless, just not ideal. What do we do? Commander, Threlix asked. Nervous Livrillis did not answer immediately, his mind racing through the options available to him. The ancient archive had been very clear in its instructions. Avoid contact at all costs. Do not engage. Do not approach. Simply leave and pretend you never saw anything. But those instructions were thousands of cycles old, written by observers who had watched primitive humans hunt animals with sharpened sticks. These humans had built starships. They had survived a close reactor failure that should have been instantly fatal. They were awake and alert, and asking for help in voices that showed no fear. "Whatsoever, Commander," the communications officer said urgently. "The human vessel is attempting to establish a direct visual link. They want to see who they are talking to." Varellus felt his four hearts pounding in his chest. If he accepted the link, he would be looking directly at a human for the first time in Tyranny history. If he refused, he would be ignoring a distress call, something that went against every principle of civilized behavior the Ascendancy claimed to uphold. And if he simply fled, as the ancient archives recommended, he would always wonder what might have happened if he had stayed. "Open the channel," he ordered. His voice barely above a whisper. The main screen flickered, and for the first time in 11,000 cycles, a Tyranny commander found himself face to face with a human being. What he saw would haunt him for the rest of his life. The human captain was smaller than he had expected, with soft-looking skin and a shade of brown that seemed warm somehow, and dark hair pulled back from a face that featured two forward-facing eyes. Positioned for predator vision, those eyes met his through the screen, and Varellus saw in them an intelligence that matched his own, a curiosity that mirrored his crew's, and something else, something that looked very much like hope. "Well, hello there," Captain Elena Vasquez said with a strange expression that showed her teeth. "It is very nice to meet you. We were starting to think we were alone out here, Commander." Varellus tried to speak, but found that his voice had abandoned him entirely. Captain Elena Vasquez waited patiently on the screen, her strange forward-facing eyes watching Commander Varellus with an expression that seemed both friendly and intensely focused at the same time. The expression she wore, the one that showed her teeth, did not change as the seconds stretched into an uncomfortable silence. Finally, Varellus found his voice, though it came out weaker than he would have liked. "I am Commander Varellus of the Ascendancy Survey Vessel Quiet Observation," he managed to say. "We detected your ship drifting and came to investigate." "Well, we certainly appreciate that," Captain Vasquez replied, her voice warm despite the harsh sounds of her language. "We had a bit of an incident with our reactor about 6 days ago. Lost main power and had to put the crew into emergency stasis while our automated systems tried to sort things out." "You survived 6 days without power," Melisandre said before she could stop herself. "How is that possible?" The human captain's strange teeth-showing expression widened slightly. "The Defiant Hope is a tough old ship," she said, "and my crew is tougher. We sealed the breach, vented the radiation, and trusted our cold sleep pods to keep everyone alive until we could figure out a solution." "Your reactor suffered a catastrophic failure," Varellus said slowly. "Our scans indicate you experienced an uncontained fusion reaction." "That is correct," Vasquez confirmed with a small movement of her head that seemed to indicate agreement. "Took out our main engine room and killed 4 good people before we could contain the damage." She said these words with sadness in her voice. But there was no panic, no desperation, no sign that she considered her situation to be anything more than a serious inconvenience. "4 of your crew died," Varellus repeated. "Yes, and we will mourn them properly once we get back home. But right now I have 47 people who are still alive and counting on me to keep them that way." The human captain leaned forward slightly, and Varellus had to resist the urge to step back from the screen. "So here's our situation," Vasquez continued. "We have limited backup power, enough air and water to last maybe another week, and no way to repair our main drive without parts we do not have. If you could spare any assistance at all, we would be extremely grateful." Commander Varellus looked at his crew, seeing his own uncertainty reflected in their dimmed bioluminescence. Every instinct he had, every lesson from the ancient archives, screamed at him to run away as fast as his ship could carry him. But the human on the screen was not a monster. She was a captain trying to save her crew, just as he would try to save his own crew if their situations were reversed. "I need a moment to consult with my officers," he said finally. "Of course," Vasquez replied. Take all the time you need. We are not going anywhere. The communication channel remained open, but the human captain turned away to speak with members of her own crew, giving Varelis a chance to confer privately with his bridge officers. What do we do? Threlix asked immediately. The archives say we should not make contact under any circumstances. The archives were written before these beings had starships, Melisandrix pointed out. Perhaps the situation has changed, or perhaps the situation is exactly what the ancient observers feared, Navigation Officer Kellex countered. They warned us that humans would eventually reach the stars, and now they have. That does not mean we should suddenly ignore thousands of cycles of accumulated wisdom. Varelis listened to his officer's debate, but his eyes kept returning to the screen, where Captain Vasquez was now helping one of her crew members adjust some piece of equipment. Her movements were efficient and purposeful, and she seemed completely unconcerned about the alien vessel watching her from across the void. Commander, Melisandrix said quietly, moving closer so only he could hear. I have been analyzing the human captain's vital signs through our sensors. And what have you found? Varelis asked. Her heart rate has not increased since we established contact. Her body temperature remains stable, and her brain activity shows no signs of fear or anxiety. Melisandrix's skin flickered with patterns of deep unease. Commander, she's not afraid of us at all, not even slightly. She looks at an alien species for the first time in her civilization's history and feels nothing but curiosity. Varelis considered this information carefully. When Thyrany explorers had first encountered other intelligent species, they had done so with extreme caution and no small amount of fear. It had taken generations before they felt comfortable interacting with beings so different from themselves. Yet, this human looked at him like he was just another person she had met. Strange perhaps, but not threatening, not frightening. Just another problem to be solved. It was then that Varelis realized what truly scared him about these humans was not their impossible biology, their heat resistance, their strength, or their resilience. It was their complete lack of fear in the face of the unknown. Species that did not fear the unknown was a species that would go anywhere, do anything, face any challenge, and never stop pushing forward until they had conquered every obstacle in their path. They, ancient archives had called them persistence hunters. And now Varelis understood exactly what that meant. They were not just physically persistent. They were mentally persistent, emotionally persistent, spiritually persistent. They simply did not give up ever. No matter what, I have made my decision, Varelis announced to his bridge crew. Everyone turned to look at him. Waiting. We will not provide direct assistance to the human vessel, he said, but we will leave them with supplies, medical equipment, and a beacon they can use to signal for help from their own kind. Commander, Threlix protested. The archives clearly state that we should avoid all contact. We have already made contact. Varelis replied firmly. We cannot undo that, but we can limit any further interaction. He turned to face the screen where Captain Vasquez had noticed his return and was waiting politely for him to speak. Captain, he said, we are not equipped to provide the kind of assistance your vessel requires, but we can leave you with supplies and a long-range beacon. The human captain's expression did not change, but something in her eyes shifted slightly. That is very generous of you, she said. May I ask why you are being so cautious about direct contact? Varelis hesitated, unsure how to explain without revealing too much. Our peoples have never met before, he said carefully, and my government prefers to approach new relationships slowly. Vasquez nodded. The same head movement Varelis had noticed earlier. I understand, she said. First contact situations can be tricky. We appreciate whatever help you can provide, and we look forward to meeting your people properly someday under better circumstances. She smiled again, showing those strange white teeth. After all, The galaxy is a big place, but not so big that we will not run into each other again. Commander Varelis felt a chill run through all four of his hearts. There was something in the way she said those words. Something that sounded less like hope and more like a promise. The Thyrany had spent 11,000 cycles avoiding the species, and now that careful isolation was about to end, the humans had found them. And Varelis suddenly knew with absolute certainty that the humans would never stop looking. Begin preparations to deploy supplies. He ordered his crew, and send a message to Central Command. Tell them the quarantine has been broken. Tell them the humans have reached the stars. He paused, watching the human captain smile at him through the void of space. Tell them it is time to decide what kind of neighbors we want to be. The supply drop from the quiet observation arrived at the Defiant Hope exactly as Commander Varelis had promised. Contained in automated pods that required no direct contact between the two ships, Captain Elena Vasquez watched from her bridge as her crew retrieved the pods and brought them aboard. Each one filled with materials that would keep them alive until rescue could arrive. Medical supplies in strange containers with alien labels. Food packets that their scientists would need to analyze before anyone could safely eat them. Water purification tablets, emergency power cells, and most importantly, a beacon that could broadcast their location across the void. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo called out from his station. The alien vessel is powering up its main drives. Looks like they are preparing to leave. Elena nodded. Unsurprised by this development, she had sensed from the beginning that Commander Varelis was afraid, not of her specifically, but of what she represented. The look in his large alien eyes when they first made contact had told her everything she needed to know. These beings had known about humanity for a long time, possibly longer than humanity had known about itself as a species, and they had chosen to stay far away. Open a channel, she ordered. The communications officer complied, and a moment later, Commander Varelis appeared on the screen once again. Captain Vasquez, he said formally, we have completed the supply transfer and will be departing shortly. The beacon we provided will broadcast on frequencies your people should be able to detect. Thank you, Commander, Elena replied genuinely. Your generosity will be remembered. The alien commander seemed uncomfortable with her gratitude, his luminescent skin flickering in patterns she could not interpret. I hope that our peoples will meet again someday under better circumstances, Varelis said, using almost exactly the same words Elena had used earlier. Elena smiled at him, the same friendly smile she had worn throughout their entire interaction. I am sure we will, she said. The galaxy is smaller than people think. Something passed across the alien commander's face at these words. Some emotion that Elena could not quite identify, but that looked almost like resignation. Farewell, Captain Vasquez, Varelis said. May your journey home be swift and safe. The channel closed, and Elena watched as the elegant alien vessel turned away and accelerated into the darkness. Within seconds it had vanished, jumping to faster-than-light speeds that left nothing behind but empty space. They could not get away from us fast enough, Okonkwo observed dryly, moving to stand beside his captain. Can you blame them? Elena replied. We must seem pretty frightening from their perspective. Frightening, Okonkwo repeated with a laugh. Captain, with all due respect, you are about as frightening as a kitten. Elena turned to look at her second-in-command with an amused expression. Tell that to the 4 pirates I killed during the Titan uprising, she said. Or the boarding party I repelled single-handed during the Belt Wars. Fair point, Okonkwo conceded. But still, we're not monsters. We're just people. Exactly, Elena said quietly. And maybe that is what scares them most of all. Before Okonkwo could ask what she meant, the sensors officer called out from across the bridge. Captain, I am detecting an object in the area where the alien vessel departed. Looks like some kind of automated buoy. Elena frowned, wondering what the Thyranny had left behind. Can you access its data? She asked. Working on it now, the officer replied. Their encryption is different from anything in our database, but the basic structure is similar enough that I think I can crack it with some time. Do it, Elena ordered. I want to know what they are saying about us. It took nearly an hour for the Defiant Hope's computers to break through the alien encryption. But when they finally succeeded, the entire bridge crew gathered around to see what had been revealed. The buoy was broadcasting a warning message on repeat, transmitting in all directions across the sector. Warning to all Ascendancy vessels. The translation software read, Sector 447 Gamma is now designated as an exclusion zone pending further review by Central Command. New species detected and confirmed as human origin. Classification Persistence Predators. The message continued with more details. Species demonstrates extreme resilience to damage, extreme adaptation capability, extreme intelligence, and extreme social cohesion. Recommend all contact be avoided until full threat assessment is completed. These beings come from a Category 12 death world and display all expected characteristics of such an origin. The final section of the warning was highlighted with what appeared to be the alien equivalent of urgent. Priority flags, critical advisory follows. Humans do not respond to obstacles the way other species do. They do not turn back when faced with difficulty. They do not accept defeat when overwhelmed. They do not stop when injured or exhausted. They simply adapt and continue forward until they have achieved their objectives. This makes them unpredictable and extremely dangerous. Do not engage. Do not approach. Do not assume they can be deterred through conventional means. The message ended with a single line that made everyone on the bridge fall silent. They do not stop. Alina read the warning 3 times, making sure she understood every word. Then she began to laugh. It started as a small chuckle and grew into a full belly laugh that echoed through the damaged bridge of her wounded ship. Captain, Okonkwo asked uncertainly, what is so funny? Elena wiped tears from her eyes and looked at her confused crew with a wide smile. Do you not see what this means? She asked. They are not running away because they think we are evil. They are running because they think we are unstoppable. She gestured at the translated warning still displayed on the screen. They looked at us and saw survivors. They saw persistence. They saw a species that refuses to give up no matter what. And it scared them so badly, they declared an entire sector of space off limits. Okonkwo considered this for a moment before his own face broke into a grin. So what you are saying is that our reputation precedes us. Exactly, Elena confirmed. And I think that might be the best first impression we could have made. She turned to look at the star chart displayed on the main screen. Noting the direction the Thyranny vessel had fled, get that beacon activated, she ordered. Once rescue arrives and we get the Defiant Hope repaired, I want to start looking into this ascendancy of theirs. You want to follow them? Okonkwo asked. Though he already knew the answer. They have been watching us since before we had fire, Elena said, her voice firm with determination. I think it is time we returned the favor. She settled back into her captain's chair and looked out at the stars with eyes that held 40,000 years of human ambition. Besides, she added with another smile, we cannot let their warning go to waste. If they are going to tell everyone that humans do not stop, then we had better live up to that reputation. The Defiant Hope drifted in the void, wounded but unbroken, carrying 47 people who had survived what should have been certain death, and somewhere across the galaxy, the Thyranny were learning what every species eventually learned about humanity. You could run from them. You could hide from them. You could build walls and declare exclusion zones and warn everyone to stay away, but sooner or later the humans would find you because the warning was right. They did not stop. They never stopped. That was exactly what made them the most terrifying and wonderful species the galaxy had ever known.